I'd like to call to order our called meeting of Elizabethton City Schools Board of Education. I'd like to thank everybody for being here today. I've got a lot of welcomes. First of all, we want to welcome new school board members, Tyler Fleming, Ms. Susan Peters. Welcome. I hope you enjoy the next 4 years of your life. So welcome. I also want to say hello to a blast from our past. Matt Cooter is here today. Glad to have him here. Mr. Tester is always our City Council liaison. We have Mr. Weems, Mr. Edmondson, and Ms. Wilhoit. Glad you are here. Also, we have Ms. Debbie Alexander, Richard Barker. Very happy you're here. And Mr. Joe Laporte. Very happy you're here. Feel free to come as often as you want. So, glad everyone's here. If you'd please stay, Mr. Alexander is going to lead us in a moment of silence and a pledge to the flag.
Before we go into that, I'd like to say, first of all, that at our next meeting on the 24th, the board photo will be made. And also, we apologize for our 2 members that the name tags have been ordered, but they're not here. So we apologize for that. And I would also like to say that we need to be thinking about Mr. Little, who has made a miraculous recovery from a very serious illness. And as we pause for a moment of silence, I ask you to think about Mrs. Bataille, who is very heavy with child, and we will know, and she'll know, if her son is with her on Monday. Please pause for a moment of silence. Thank you. Attention. Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started, I want to make a very happy announcement. Prior to our meeting, Mr. Richard Barker presented our school system a check for $10,000 to be added towards the stadium complex. If you will remember, a few months ago, Mr. Barker presented us with another check, and these are in memory of his lovely wife, Mary Lynn, and in honor of his family. Thank you again. This is a big day. Also want to take care of a couple of housekeeping items. This is kind of an unusual meeting for us. After an election, the board always holds our selection of a chair and a vice chair. If you will look in your policies, policy book, and it is in your board agenda today. Policy 1.200 states that we'll have our elections at the first regular meeting, and that's going to be on Monday the 24th. And since this is a called meeting, it doesn't fall under that, so we will not be doing that today. But do come prepared on the 24th for those elections. So for today, I will continue to serve as chair, and Mr. Isaacs will serve as the vice chair. And I want to kind of apologize to Mr. Fleming and Ms. Peters for so soon after being sworn in, we're having a called meeting. We don't have these often, but we do have them when time is of the essence. This board has been pretty straightforward that as soon as we had our final numbers on the stadium project, that we would have a called meeting because time is of the essence. Stadium's not going to get built by us not doing anything. So we got the final numbers, and so we are having this called meeting. So I do want to apologize for the quick notice, but I'm happy to have you participate in a historic day for our school system because this is something, well, our town's been waiting for this for 40 years, and a lot of us have been working on this for about 7 years. As a called meeting, we can only discuss the items that are on the agenda, so please keep that in mind. If there's other things you want to talk about, we'll need to do that at our regular scheduled meeting. And I think that's it. So it is now time for citizens to speak in accordance with Board Policy 1.404. Anyone wishing to address the board, please come forward, state your name and your address. And again, you can only discuss anything that is on the agenda. All right. Seeing no one, it is time to approve the regular agenda. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Time for anybody have questions or comments?
Can we possibly separate item 5 to 2 approval items instead of just one, since it's basically 2 different things?
We talked about that. I think it was kind of, I believe we spoke with the attorneys about that. It's kind of the chicken and the egg, which one would come first and which one would come second. Mr. Van Huss, reason that we wanted to keep it, I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
Ms. Boer, you are correct. That is the reason that we put those two items together, because you know, we couldn't decide which one was more appropriate because each depended on the other. You know, now that's why we did that. So I mean, that's certainly up to the board to decide how to move forward.
But if you want to separate them, I mean, we can. That was just our logic behind it, was trying to figure out which one to vote on.
I understand a lot. I just had some questions on the donation and some of the language in the donation, and, but we need to handle this one. We can. I just wouldn't want that to knock out the entire
Sure.
suggestion.
Well, do we want to separate them? I mean, we can do the...
If we separate them, we need to do we don't have enough funds to do the price without the gift in the currently agreed upon structure that we've voted in the past. So if we do that, we need to talk about the gift first and then the maximum
I
price.
agree with that.
Okay.
And it's just about the language. It's not about not accepting a donation. So.
Okay. So you want to separate them out? Is that what everyone wants, or just talk about them in
If that's
one?
the pleasure of the board, I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with that.
With which one?
Separating them out, if that would be a productive discussion. But I would suggest we take it as item 5A would be the approve the gift,
Yes.
and then 5B would be the approve the guaranteed maximum price.
All right. We can do that. Anybody else? Okay. Item on the floor is to approve the regular agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. All right. So, first item on the floor is to approve gift agreement between Citizens Bank, Tri-Cities Foundation Limited, and Elizabethton City Schools. Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Fleming, if you'd like to ask your question?
I guess my my concern in this, and it's a wonderful donation, and we have a lot to be thankful for the many donations from the community, and certainly appreciate the Laporte family for this. My concern is the language concerning the naming rights. I think there's a statement about the band room's name being determined at a later date. Is that going to be through the donor? Is that through do we have board policy that dictates what we do as far as naming of facilities?
We do not. We do not.
Can I suggest that we move in that direction at another meeting?
Absolutely. We can put that on there.
And again, I just don't want to be locked in as far as the naming of the facility.
Well, the board will always...
To me, the language reads in here that the donor has the rights to the naming of the facilities, or has the approval rights.
Actually, the board will always have the final approval. We've actually had some really wonderful conversations with Mr. Laporte. We have talked about this. And, you know, throughout this whole process, we have given everybody the opportunity to step up, to donate. And there was a brochure that talked about for certain monetary levels that there was the naming thing. But the board will always be able to, you know.
I guess I was just concerned with future facilities as far as this goes. And not just in this project, but 5 years from now, if we build something somewhere else, that we have a policy for naming the facilities.
Yes. We can always add that to the agenda. Also, just as a side note, typically throughout the year, we take each area of our policy book and look through it. So we can do that at that time, or we can put
that was my concern. It was more language than it was. Again, we appreciate the donation. I think that's wonderful.
Oh, absolutely. I can't thank the Laporte family enough for absolutely being our partners in this and working with us every step of the way. I know that Mr. Laporte's a very busy man, and he attended a lot of our committee meetings, offered us some great suggestions, and the generosity of this gift is going to make a huge difference for our town and for our students. So,
Mrs. Boer, excuse me, is it appropriate to ask what the total fund balance for the donations is at the moment?
For the entire...
For this project.
Mr. Van Hush, you might as well just come and sit in the front row.
This is off the top of my head, so don't hold me to to the exact, down to the penny, but
That's all right.
at this point, we have some funding from from Jason Witten, from the Tough Guy award that he received several years ago. And of that money, it was a $50,000 donation, and $5,000 of that we used to purchase a Gator. That's a vehicle that we use at football games, and it will be used in the new stadium to help groom the field and things like that. So there's basically $45,000 there. When the Elizabethton City Schools Foundation was dissolved, there was some money there, somewhere around $10,000 roughly, that was donated back to the school system to be designated for these type projects. And then, of course, we have now a $25,000 donation from Mr. Barker in memory of his family, and then the potential for this one. And I don't think, and then we're also in the process of a brick paver project fundraising drive there, and I'm not sure, we've sold maybe somewhere around 50 of those brick, and they're basically $100 a piece, and then of course there'll be a manufacturing cost involved in that. So I can't give you an exact figure on that.
So the total is 45, or is it 45 plus all the things you just listed?
It's 45 plus the other things. Yes, ma'am.
So it sounds like it's about 65 to 70.
Somewhere in that ballpark.
Thank
Yes, ma'am. And if I could point out one other thing, if you notice on the agreement on page 3, there is at the top of the page there's a blank for a dollar figure for out of the first payment that shall be designated for signage, and that number, it will be $30,000. So $30,000 of the donation of the first payment will be applied toward signage in the stadium. So that's what that blank is. So if you move on this item, I would ask that you approve it with that $30,000 amount in that blank.
Thank you.
Well, I have to commend our community. That's pretty remarkable. I researched what was raised at Tennessee High and Science Hill and Greenville and Dobbins Bennett, and this exceeds all the donations in those communities. It's very remarkable.
I would also like to point out that it exceeds in other ways that I wanted to thank publicly Mr. Laporte for his support, and Citizens Bank and the entire community who has gone before our city council, our funding body, and has worked with us to look at bond issues and other creative ways. They've been very involved hand in hand with this to the point where I think that largely this project is doable because of their influence and their ability to see sometimes creative financing options for us. So I wanted to thank you publicly for that.
I'd like to echo Dr. May's remarks as well. Thank you very much.
Anything else? Okay. Item on the floor is to approve the gift agreement between Citizens Bank of Tri-Cities Foundation Limited and Elizabethton City Schools. Mr. Alexander, can we do a voice vote?
We can.
Thank you.
At this time, Mrs. Brewer,
Aye.
Mr. Fleming,
Aye.
Mr. Isaacs, Dr. May,
Aye.
Ms. Peters.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Now for the second part, item on the floor, approve a guaranteed maximum price, the GPM, of $4.3 million with Goins, Rash, and Kane Incorporated for the construction of the EHS Stadium. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Questions?
Yes, any questions, comments on this?
I have several questions for you. On page 1 of the contract, it's page 1. I was up half the night last night. I felt like I was a college kid studying for my finals, trying to read all this. It states that the 4.3 sum consists of the construction manager's fee and the cost of the work. I mean, where are the architectural and engineering fees and the heating costs? Are they included in that as well? Or is that separate?
You may have
Those
Mr.
are
Fleming
separate.
address it.
Yes, those are separate. Those are.
They're separate from the total amount.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So where are the funds coming for all of that?
It will come from a combination of the $3.5 million from the bond issue, of course, the gifts that we've already discussed and received, and then fund balance at this point.
From the school funds?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Fund balance,
Yes,
okay. If $3.5 million of the 5 is used for the stadium and Mr. Laporte is contributing an additional $500,000, can you tell me where the additional $300,000, is that coming from the schools, the school fund?
Yes, ma'am. Fund balance.
Okay. Have any bids gone out on the band room yet? Where did the $1.5 million on the band room and the classroom figure come from?
That was what we agreed with, of course, City Council to set aside those monies for the band room. And at this point, preliminary work that Mr. Weems has done is where we've arrived at the $1.5 million.
You haven't bid that project out?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. That will be the next, basically the process we're going through right now. We'll do the same thing. Hopefully in January will be the plan. We are working now. Mr. Weems will present information to the Planning Commission in December. They'll go through that process, similar to what we've done with the stadium, and then at that point in time, we'll be back to the board just as we are now.
The last question I had was, what's the total architectural fee on this project?
The agreed amount, I think, it's 5.5% on the stadium and 6.5 on the band room, and that was already approved by the.
So that comes out to what, about $400,000?
Roughly, yes, ma'am.
And that will be in addition to the bond money?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
That's it.
And that's been previously approved, though, correct? And Mr. Van Huss, just a further clarification, when you mention the band room, you're talking about additional classrooms, converting the previous band room into 4 or 5 classrooms. All that is in this one package. It's not just the music facility.
That is correct.
Just clarification.
Yes, sir. And I would like to remind the board, these were our projects from the get-go, and I can assure the board, as we have told City Council, even though we're talking about the stadium today, that those projects are going to be completed, and we're excited, just as excited about that as we are about this stadium project. They all fit together, and they're both going to be phenomenal for our community.
Mr. Van Huss, is it correct to say that there's a 10-month window to complete both projects?
Yes, sir.
Once we start with this project, there's a
That is correct.
window, weather permitting.
That is correct.
That we
Yes,
complete
sir.
both projects.
Yes, sir.
Is Ms. Wilson here? Oh, there you are. Sorry. As I understand it, when we spoke before, our fund balance is more than adequate to cover these. In our previous meetings, we've already established that. Is that correct? I want to make sure that I'm basing it on the correct assumptions.
Do you have the fund balance available?
We have around $1 million.
Okay, thank you.
And if I'm correct, Ms. Wilson, correct me, we've already paid a portion of those architect fees. Is that correct?
I think I read that was about, what, $80,000 you've already paid?
Yes, and then we've had some additional.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, so on the floor is to approve a guaranteed maximum price, the GMP, of $4.3 million with Goins Rash and Kane Incorporated for construction of the EHS Stadium. Mr. Alexander, would you do a voice vote, please?
Ms. Brewer?
Aye.
Mr. Fleming?
Aye.
Mr. Isaacs? Dr. May?
Aye.
Ms. Peters?
No.
Motion carries. Last item is to approve the TCPN contract with Field Turf for athletic turf material and installation for the new EHS Stadium at a cost of $727.33. This amount will be credited back from GRC to the school system. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Nothing?
This went through the state contract, right? So
Yes.
you're not going to get a better price on it.
That has been bid.
Yes, it's already been bid to the state contracts.
And
And there's no one local that could do that anyway.
I'm told this is very good turf. Yes. Excellent.
It can be viewed at Tennessee High if you wish to see the finished product of that.
Can I say one thing?
Please
And
do.
if you'll notice on there, there's an alternate at the bottom. There's an alternate bid that is a $24,000 deduct. It basically takes the turf from 2.5-inch fiber length down to 2 1/4, and there's some infill savings there. So our intention is to go with that alternate. It doesn't affect the performance of the turf.
Anybody else? Fantastic. All right. Item on the floor is to approve TCPN contract with Field Turf for athletic turf material installation for the new EHS Stadium at a cost of $431,727.33. This amount will be credited back from GRC to the school system. Mr. Alexander, one more time.
Mrs. Brewer?
Aye.
Mr. Fleming?
Aye.
Mr. Isaacs? Dr. May?
Aye.
Mrs. Peters?
Aye. Mrs. Brewer, I wonder if I might make a statement in regard to my vote?
Absolutely.
I'm a little concerned about my ability to make an informed vote with the amount of time that I've had to examine the issue. But in light of that fact, I wish to quote from the Boardmanship Code Ethics Board Policy 1.106, Article 2, Section 2, which states, as a board member, I will endeavor to appraise fairly both the present and future educational needs of the community and to support improvement as finances permit. Unquote. End of quote. In my estimation, this project does not fit that criteria and is not in the best use of taxpayer dollars. Excuse me. The cost for this project have escalated in the past year and a half from $3.5 million to $3.8 to $4 and now $4.3. Mr. Van Huss was quoted as saying the committee should recommend a limit not to exceed $3.5 million, and Councilman Tester agreed during those committee meetings. If the remaining needed funds cannot be raised and have to come from the general fund, I would strongly disagree with that on the basis of there being so many needs in the schools themselves. I repeat that there has been a need for a covered walkway at Harold McCormick for many, many years, and I do not think the teachers, parents, and students should have to be raising funds for that themselves. This is only one example of the 2 pages I've seen of the current 5-year capital projects expenditure plan for 2014 to 2018, and that will need to be funded. So having said all of that, that is why I voted no on this article. Thank you.
Our next regularly scheduled board meeting will be held Monday, November 24th. Before we adjourn this meeting, Mr. Laporte, thank you, Citizens Bank.
Ms. Brewer, I'd like to publicly thank Richard Barker as well and his family.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you. Folks, it's a good day to be a cyclone. We've waited a long time for this. Just thanks to everyone so much. I believe that Mr. Laporte has a press release for the media. Everybody just go hug him really, really good. And Mr. Edmonston, Mr. Weems, build us a stadium. Here we go. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Oh, yeah. We're out of here.